Have you ever been part of an organization that had a great vision, but something just didn't feel right? In fact, maybe the mission statement looked amazing on paper, but when you were in the room, you could just sense a tension or maybe the mistrust or even competition. You might have thought, man, something is wrong here. Well, my name is Dale Sisam, and I'm so excited to be your host for this week's podcast, and I'm really looking forward to our topic today. Over the past year, I've had a chance to lead this podcast, and we've talked about the power of vision, how to create and communicate a compelling vision. Well, today I want to talk about something that I believe is even more important than vision. So you say, well, what's more important than vision? Culture. Because having a clear vision alone isn't enough. Vision gives direction, but culture determines the atmosphere we breathe as we pursue that vision. See, vision tells us where we're going, but culture tells us how we're going to get there and what it feels like along the way. So why is having culture and the right culture important? Well, it's because vision without culture won't last. Every leader I know loves to talk about vision. I do. It's exciting, it's inspiring, it pulls people forward, but over time I've discovered something that just might surprise you. It's often been said that culture eats vision for breakfast. Why is that? Because you can have the clearest vision in the world, but if the culture of your team is unhealthy, then it won't matter. Vision may attract people, but culture is what keeps them. Proverbs 29:18, you've heard me say this, where there's no vision, the people perish. Well, that's true, but I'll add this to it. Where there is no healthy culture, the people leave. Or worse, they stay, but their hearts are adrift. See, culture is the glue that holds our shared values together. It's the unspoken agreement that shapes how we treat each other, how we make decisions, and how we respond under pressure. So what's culture really? Well, when we talk about culture, we're not talking about a slogan on a wall or a statement in a handbook. You see, culture is the way we do things around here. It's the collective personality of your team. It's what people experience when they're around you. It's what happens when you're not in the room. In Acts chapter 2, we get a glimpse of the early church's culture. It says that they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship and to breaking of bread and to prayer. You see, all of the believers together had everything in common, and that's what they followed. That was their culture. Now notice this. Before the early church had buildings or budgets or programs, they had a shared culture. It was a culture of devotion, generosity, and relationship. And they didn't just talk about community, they lived it. You see, that is culture. Culture is the invisible atmosphere of your ministry. Culture is like oxygen. It's invisible, but man, you know immediately when it's missing or it's toxic. In fact, have you ever walked into a room and you just felt the tension without anyone saying any word? That's culture. And if you've been on a team where encouragement flows naturally and people celebrate each other, well, that's culture too. You see, every church, every ministry, every business, every team has one, whether we've shaped it intentionally or we've just allowed it to form even by accident. But here's the truth. If you don't define your culture, somebody else will. And that's why as leaders, we have to ask ourselves, what kind of environment are we creating? What's it like to be on the other side of my leadership? You see, those questions tell us more about our ministry than any strategic plan ever could. So how do we build the kind of culture that supports our God-given vision? Well, we start with values. Values are the shared convictions about what matters most. See, vision answers where are we going, but values answer who are we becoming. Values become culture when they're not just words we say, but it's the way we live. You see, when humility becomes our posture and grace becomes our language and servanthood becomes our default response, then you're building culture. And if our values are truly rooted in Christ, then our culture will naturally reflect our heart. In think about the ministry of Jesus. He modeled the culture of the kingdom. How did he do that? Well, he welcomed the outcast. He empowered the overlooked, and he called his disciples friends. He didn't just teach the values, but he embodied them. And that's what creates lasting culture. You see, when your culture aligns with your vision, then something powerful happens. People not only know where they're going, but they want to get there together. See, that's when energy happens. There's trust, there's joy. But when culture and vision are misaligned, then friction replaces the momentum. In fact, you'll feel it in conversations and decision-making, even in worship. I've seen churches with incredible vision statements. They were beautiful and biblical and strategic, but the culture underneath was toxic. It was divided or competitive. And over time, that culture will always overpower the vision. Why is that? It's because people reproduce what they experience, not what they're told. If you want a multiplying movement, then focus on creating a multiplying culture. If you want a culture of honor, then you got to model honor. If you want a culture of growth, then celebrate growth whenever you see it. Because culture doesn't begin in a conference room, it begins in the leader's heart. So how do you know what your culture really is? Ask the people in the culture. Ask your team, your volunteers, your congregation, hey, what's it like to be part of this ministry? What stories do we celebrate most? What behaviors get rewarded? Now, these are tough questions, and you might not like the answers, because their answers will tell you what kind of culture you actually have, not just the one you hope to have. You see, healthy culture shows up in the small things, how we handle mistakes, how we talk about others when they're not in the room, how we support one another when things are hard. See, culture is not built in a day, but it's reinforced every day. I once visited two churches that had almost identical visions. Both wanted to reach their communities for Christ. They wanted to disciple new believers and multiply leaders. The first church had energy. Man, was there energy. But there was also exhaustion. The team was driven, but there was tension, staff turnover, burnout, unspoken competition. But the second church had a quiet strength. There was laughter in the hallways. Leaders cared for one another, and you could feel the peace. Same vision, but a different culture. And guess which one was multiplying? You see, vision attracts, but culture sustains. So let me ask you again, what's more important than vision? Well, the answer is the culture that carries it. You see, vision can be written on paper, but culture is written on people's hearts. And when a culture reflects the heart of Jesus, when it's marked by humility, love, and grace, it becomes unstoppable. So, as you lead today, don't just cast vision, but cultivate culture. Ask God to help you see the unseen, to notice the attitudes, the habits, the atmosphere that shape your ministry more than any plan or program ever could. Because in the end, vision will set your direction, but culture will determine your destiny. Man, am I so glad that you joined us for today's episode. If this was helpful to you and your team, then hit the subscribe button and share it with someone else, or maybe even go back through this podcast with your team. And until then, keep leading with grace, keep multiplying leaders, keep building a culture that reflects the heart of Christ. See you next time.